I've had a variety of traumatic experiences in my life, starting from growing up in a home filled with alcoholism and domestic violence to being a teenager and being sexually assaulted, and then ending up in the commercial sex industry and being assaulted by my pimp, by a couple of other people, and then nearly murdered. Ended up leaving England when I was 17 and entering the commercial sex industry, originally just as a way to get back to England from Germany, where I'd bought a one-way ticket, and then met a guy who was my boyfriend initially, who very quickly became my pimp, even though I had no conception of what that meant. And so ended up spending a couple of years in the sex industry in Germany, and with a severe amount of violence that was happening, and then ended up getting out and came to the States when I was 22, originally working as a missionary with adult women coming out of the sex industry, but within the first year started my own organization, GEMS, Girls Educational and Mentoring Services, to serve girls and young women who had had the same experiences as me. I think there are some people who can go through trauma and terrible situations and they don't come out healthier or wiser, or right, they're broken. I think what you learn in experiences of extreme trauma, violence, bad stuff happening, I think right, the lessons you're learning are like the world is bad, there's lots of evil in the world, right? Like those aren't the lessons that are going to carry you through or keep you, get you whole or heal you or whatever. I think it's what happens after that. If you can have community around you, if you have people who are able to help you put perspective, if you've got some level of self-awareness that you can begin to process this, being able to acknowledge what you've experienced and being honest about that and talking about that and being open about that and finding people who are supportive in a community of people who understand. And I think there's been a big part of this work in running GEMS and working with young people, girls and young women who've experienced extreme forms of violence, that has been in itself very healing. Really being in that community, and realizing that the things that you would say to other people to support them, to make them not feel shame or blame or any of those things, are the same things you need to be telling yourself, I think has been a big lesson. I think you also learn that there is, the human will is incredibly resilient, and that you will fight to survive, even when you think you wouldn't, even when there's been times where I feel like I didn't want to be alive, and yet still something in you will keep fighting. As a person of faith, right, who feels very strongly that, and I think that was initially part of my kind of big healing, was coming to the realization, or for me the understanding, that there was a God who cared about me, even if I felt like no one else did, or I felt like I didn't even care about myself. And so my relationship with God, as I define it, has been really important for me in my kind of healing process, because then it gives a larger context. You think about the things that people have gone through, and yet they're still able to love and laugh and grow and be compassionate, right? And so just the power and the strength of the human spirit, I think, is incredibly moving. I mean, this is why I feel like I was put on this planet, right? Is to do this work, is to serve young women and girls, right? I mean, this week I just got to see one of my young women honored by the president by name, right? Like, if I hadn't started GEMS, she wouldn't be on staff now and have been at GEMS for 9 years, and right, that wouldn't have happened. And so, and if I hadn't gone through what I went through, GEMS wouldn't be here. So I mean, everything has ended up working out for the greater good. There's a quote from Judith Herman, and it's in the fabulous book Trauma and Recovery, which everybody in the universe should read, particularly if you've been through trauma. But it talks about, those who end up being able to heal the most from their own trauma are those who use it to help others, right? But supporting and empowering and loving others through their pain is a very good remedy for your own. Like, it can get really good and happy and healthy and great, and the things that you've been through never disappear, right? And sometimes they'll pop up, and sometimes you have to deal with them, and sometimes you have a nightmare in the middle of, right? Like, that's real. But that that doesn't take away from the richness of your life, or the love that you have in your life, or the strength that you have, all of those things. You're not defined by your past, you're not defined by your trauma. I wrote Girls Like Us really as a way of helping people recognize who girls like us are. And what's been amazing is having girls who have been in the sex industry and have been trafficked read it and tell me, oh my God, I realized I was a victim and I didn't know anybody had this life, and now I want to be like you when I grow up. Like, I mean, that's kind of awesome.